Everyone has a different understanding of expensive. This is a notion I've been desperate to hold on to even as my day job blossomed into a career that has afforded me a life of moderate comforts. At the start of this year I released a video entitled Cool Games for a Fiver, a sort of PSA for the amount of good, interesting, worthy interactive experiences you can have for next to nothing. But obviously that's my understanding of next to nothing, and I appreciate that it's still a potent barrier to entry for some, especially during a time when the cost of living has never been higher. With this in mind, I wanted to talk about the frankly staggering amount of games out there that you can enjoy without spending a single penny, because as I've discovered over the years, there are creators out there who are both immeasurably talented and bloody generous. This video is about 8 games that you can play right now for free. Babbdi is a fascinating world to explore. To me, it feels like a sort of Eastern European counterpoint to Cosmo D's Off-Peak series, in that it presents a cityscape that feels otherworldly and yet wholly believable. But while Off-Peak is a series about grabbing hold of liminality and giving it a big sloppy kiss on the mouth, Babbdi is about escape. And this central concept permeates throughout the whole game, bones and all. The cityscape of Babbdi is a fascinatingly oppressive thing. High-rises dwarf you, the district surrounded on all sides by industrial Goliaths, with the only true means of exit being a rail system for which you need a ticket. Getting that ticket is, well, that's the whole point of the game, and I can assure you that it really doesn't go the way you think it's going to. Navigation is the bread and butter of what you do in Babbdi, finding ways around, through and up these gargantuan buildings in order to reach the travel office. The more you explore, the more tools you find to aid you. I won't spoil the surprise, but some of these items have a fascinatingly comedic value on top of being extremely helpful. The dichotomy is intentional, darkly humorous, but in an extremely unconventional, diegetic way. This is a game that reconciles its gameplay with its world and its world with its narrative, and somehow its slapstick elements don't dampen the impact of its more serious undertones. Because at its heart, Babbdi is a game about its borders, and about the tragedy of being mixed up in what the people in power have decided will be normal. It's all shits and giggles until you have to reckon with the grim reminder that our environments shape us as structures in our own right, and then, more often than not, force us to crumble. There have been a number of games recently centered around the premise of you have to go up and it's not going to be easy. Games like Only Up, Jump King, and Bet on Brutal are experiences about precision platforming in a world where the smallest mistake can potentially ruin your day. But part of the pleasure of these titles is that should you inevitably stumble, getting back to where you were ends up validating your progress, the path to mastery over this domain. You become more intimately familiar with the topography of these worlds, their quirks and dangers, and in a peculiar way, although the destination is very much the goal, it's really not all that important to the experience as a whole. Where Mizeria falls in all this is that it's another game in which you have to go up and it's not going to be easy, but rather than simply jumping about, you have a substantial moveset to utilize in order to navigate the tower you're trying to escape from, including a bow used to alter parts of the world to your advantage. It's great. There's a kinetic sense of space that feels very nostalgic despite being incredibly contemporary. You have to build up an understanding of how your moves intersect with the geometry of the world and develop an innate spatial awareness to go with this, to understand that yes, you can in fact reach that platform that looks a little bit too far away. There's a quiet bliss in playing games like this for me. I find these worlds weirdly soothing, cozy even. In the absence of tangible, traditional danger, peril takes on a different form here, one that seems imminently more manageable from the get-go. You climb, you fall, you climb again. Maybe one day you'll reach whatever awaits you at the top, but until then, you can always enjoy the journey. Sometimes a game wears its inspirations on its sleeve and still manages to feel like a wholly unique experience in and of itself. I can't explain the magic behind this, but you do get these titles that are clearly cribbing off genre staples and often even specific works, but still feel like they could have only been made by this one person or team. Swollen to bursting until I am disappearing on purpose is a short RPG set in a small town where you work in the post office. Strange things start happening with the appearance of a crashed UFO one day, but you still have parcels parcels to deliver. 4 deliveries, each with their fair share of obstacles in the way, in a town full of weird and wonderful characters and some otherworldly things going on behind the scenes. I call this an RPG, but it's more that it wears the feeling of one when, in reality, it's more of an adventure game. You navigate obstacles by obtaining certain items called effects that can be used to increase your level when you take them to a milking machine. Yeah, it's a very strange game, you just have to run with it. Combat is as simple as, if you are higher level than the opponent, you will win. Itself a sly nod to how games like Earthbound handled the power curve, and because of this, the whole experience gives off the sensation of being an elaborate sequence puzzle. The order in which you approach your tasks matters the most, somewhat paradoxically encouraging exploration more, even as it constantly roadblocks you. I think I probably could have done without being booted all the way back to the start screen upon game over, but it's a minor knock on an otherwise really fun little affair. It's a fascinating game, full of weird and wonderful vignettes, and there's a lovely papercraft vibe to the art direction that makes it stand out as a creative work. It can be technically completed from start to finish in under 20 minutes once you complete your 4 deliveries and return to the post office, but there's so much more to uncover if you're willing to dig. Whole entire areas of the game are optional encounters, and the further you venture, the stranger the whole thing gets. I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. One of the most formative ideas that you can benefit from growing up is the understanding that while experiences are not universal, empathy is. And that distinction is critical in helping form bonds with people who have been brought up in other cultures from different demographics and who intrinsically, ethnically and biologically will live in the same world but in a different way. It's why absorbing works from artists of different backgrounds is so important, and why platforming diversity in entertainment spaces is more than just woke nonsense. As a white Western man, what I don't know about the world could fill the depths of the ocean to the outer reaches of the universe. It is essential for me to experience the stories told through the eyes of others in order to better examine the world through my own. Although, as a caveat, I do appreciate that artists are not put on this earth simply to provide lessons for Whitey. I know I have to put some of the work in myself. It is through these principles that I come to All Our Asias, a short narrative experience from Melos Hantani of Analgesic Productions. This is the tale of a young man diving into the memories of his ailing father in order to get some sense of who he was, in turn trying to corroborate his own identity with the circumstances of his upbringing. It is fascinating and culturally specific, and it asks you to think about how you rationalize your solidarity with those around you. This will not be a game for everybody, and it will mean different things to different folk. Its storytelling is focused and intentionally alienating. Its art direction is fascinatingly ugly, jagged polygons and low-resolution environments cut together with a brilliantly harsh UI and a great soundtrack. Its gameplay is glacial, playing out more like a whistle-stop tour of individual visual novel bites with little else to engage with, which, considering the mechanics-first approach that its creator has in all their other works, is surprising. But then, this is so very clearly a more personal project, something made because there was something that needed to be said out loud. It's specific, in the way all great art necessitates, and you gain value from it whether its perspective resonates with you or not. And what do you have to lose, aside from your preconceived notions about the world? Here are 20 small mazes, and they're all really good. This game plays around with the medium in ways that are extremely tactile and satisfying, framing these as physical spaces, not in the sense of the mazes themselves, but rather the canvas that they are built on. The game does some really interesting things with momentum and obfuscation. At first, you can attempt almost any of these mazes in any order, you just have to shuffle the pages around to get to some of them, like these are leaves from a book scattered haphazardly. But you start to realise that they have been placed here in this order for a reason. There is more to this than meets the eye. That which is obscured is done so with great strategic intent, and I think that intent is to give the player the tools to break away from their understanding of what a maze is and to grasp a hold of the idea of what it can be. I find puzzle games a bit of a mixed bag. I'm not the smartest man in the world, no matter how many big words I love to use, and I find with puzzles that there is a subtle distinction between the ones that make you feel clever and the ones that are clever. And I say distinction, but this isn't a binary statement. state. You can have both, and you can also have neither. 20 small mazes takes a little from column A and a little from column B. It satisfies in the way simple, universal puzzle games do, but it's not just content with leaving things at that, and I think the physicality of these puzzle pages adds to the experience in a very pointed way. It's also remarkable to me just how much mileage the game gets out of its central ideas. Not one of these 20 mazes plays the same. Each one has a gimmick that blossoms out into a wholly unique mechanical engagement, evoking other genres in the process, and the freedom to tackle these things in whatever order you feel like, but that also they have been presented to you in a very specific order, is a really fascinating tug of war between the player and the designer that I will be thinking about for years to come. I don't have much else to add to this. It's 20 small mazes. See if you can reach the exit. The one primal evil of our modern world is that we have an economy that has all the capacity and power to free us, but it does not. Marx was right. In all universes, it is labor that produces everything, but it's the type of economic system that determines who gets paid and who does not. It's the politics of that economic system that determines who gets taken care of and who does not. It's the cultural poison that bubbles up through a combination of both that makes for the immiseration of a population, and one of the strongest conclusions of all this is that it's really hard to know exactly what to do to fight back. A Bewitching Revolution is not the game to provide that aha moment, but it is a useful learning tool as an introduction to political concepts. At its heart, a puzzle game set in a magically infused urban environment, you're tasked with solving a variety of social conundrums and teaching the denizens of the city about their value against the capitalist structures that bind them. The mechanics of this are a little basic, but aesthetically very effective, leading acorns to cracks in the concrete to grow trees, casting sigils on doors of abandoned houses in order to break in and squat, tarot readings that are lessons in Marxism. It's an interesting curio, wearing its politics on its sleeve, but one of the issues I had with it is that it's quite one note. These are the problems and here are the solutions, without necessarily factoring the human element to this equation, more nuanced ideas. It's all very surface level in what it does have to offer. To a certain degree, I don't really take much issue with this. I wasn't going in expecting Disco Elysium or anything, and I do appreciate that the ideas it does present are clear-cut and uncompromised. It also doesn't obfuscate the real-world implication of its politics, even though the space itself is steeped in magical fiction. Feels like a good base for a more ambitious title, one that entrusts its player to be more academically literate than it currently does. Give it a go and see what you think. Madison Carr has really cornered the indie market in cute, macabre point-and-click puzzle games. Burton-esque, but without the baggage that entails. Clever, comfortable gothic vibes. Last year's Birth was a brilliantly solemn and heartfelt story told through the quest to build a friend, and since I played it, I've gone back to look at her previous work, which is smaller in scope, but no less magical in experience. Whimsy has you navigating a weird and wonderful dreamscape. The creatures of this realm have requests of you, and in order to proceed, you have to engage your little grey cells to make sense of the conundrums around. Carr's approach to puzzle design is wonderfully intuitive, with almost no words needed to express the ideas essential to solving her various riddles. Contextual clues in the game's art, in the tactility of the interface. It's a sequence of puzzles that, for the most part, just make sense. All of this is bolstered by a cute art style that really feels like it's drawn inspiration from childhood literary illustration. There's something about the tone, the coziness of these often on-paper hellish-looking creatures that feels so very warm and inviting. I really dig it. I did struggle with one or two individual challenges, but on the whole I found this a satisfying, concise experience that's the perfect remedy to a rainy afternoon. It won't take you too long, and you'll remember it fondly for the years after. Developed by the aptly named Parkourer team, Urban Nightmare is like the haunted PS1 demo disc version of Mirror's Edge. Kinetic, well-paced, brief, and a little clumsy, but undoubtedly a game that has bags of personality. You engage in a series of courses, leaping across rooftops, wall running, jumping, climbing, all in a quite literal urban hellscape. It has a brilliant momentum to it. The Mirror's Edge comparison is not without merit, even if the execution is not quite as polished. There's also this found footage visual element, a VHS filter over the screen, which, although a look that's now bordering on saturated thanks to so many projects having a similar idea, I still think it looks quite neat. Where this game falls a bit short is that for all its setup and circumstance, there's little in the way of actual peril to be found here. This setting and the obstacle course nature of the thing really lends itself to horror, and more pointedly the idea of being chased, but I never felt the sense of danger that the game's aesthetic suggests. There are multiple moments I had where I fudged a jump but survived and had ample time to readjust my positioning to start again with little in the sense of urgency. This is in spite of the on-screen timer. In a non-horror setting this wouldn't be an issue at all. Here it just feels a bit flaky and non-committal, an aesthetics-only design. Having said that, I still had a great time with this game. I think it looks really nice and the parkour mechanics are solid. It's another one of those experiences I think could have the potential to blossom out into a more ambitious work, and although not present in the footage I'm showing you here, there's some great remixed levels in the lost footage mode that unlocks once you beat the game that get increasingly non-Euclidean. I think this is a cool little thing, and especially given that it's spooky season at the time of recording this, why not add this to your roster? It's a fascinating ecosystem that the games industry has created for itself, albeit one I don't feel is looking particularly healthy these days. Big money's get-rich-quick pump-and-dump schemes have been burning through talented folk for decades now, sucking the air out of the room and warping the consumer base's understanding of the value of things. Most, if not all, the games on this list, I don't really understand why their creators aren't charging for them, beyond a depressing assumption that no one's going to pay for what they have to offer. Artistic endeavours should never be at the beck and call of capital, and yet, folk do still need to eat. Where tip jars and pay what you want options are available, I will post links in the video description. I do recommend that you check games like this out. This is only a fraction of the stuff I've discovered over the years, and although I haven't loved every single one I've played, I've still been astonished at the level of quality present throughout. There's a lot of shit to wade through these days. Sometimes you just have to take a leap.